Hello guys, Wicked here, ex-professional League of Legends player and currently one of the highest rated players in Deadlock. Today we're gonna do some tips and tricks for the new players in the game and also a lot of experienced players, because I think a lot of these things are things that people don't know. You open up the game for the first time and you have to choose a hero that you want to play. Now, the heroes I would recommend for a new player or someone who's not extremely experienced yet would be Abrams, Kelvin, Lady Geist, Mo and Krill, Pocket, Seven, and Shiv over here. And the reason for these heroes is because they're all relatively easy to play. They all have a lot of impact. For example, Shiv is really strong and he has a knife build where all you have to do is hit your knives and it's going to do a lot of bleed damage over time, so it becomes quite easy to play. Some other characters like Viscous is crazy difficult to play and it's just not something that's very new player friendly. Now the next thing I would recommend is opening practice range, because it's one of the best tools to figure out what you want to do with a hero. And if you don't know what you want to do with a hero when you're in game, it's going to be very difficult for you to buy the right items. So let's take Seven as an example, because I recently made a guide on him. So on Seven, what you can do is you open up builds up here, like you click B, open up builds, and then you can find all the builds that people have made for Seven in the list over here. Now there's a lot of different good builds and this works for every single character. Personally, I would recommend my own build because I'm going to keep this up to date and make sure it's one of the best you can possibly take. And all you have to do is click favorite on whatever build you like. Let's take this one for example, whatever. Let's take the Mobilytics one. You take that one and it's going to show up in your favorites, and then you can always just find it quickly when you're in game and you know exactly what you want to do. Very simple, very straightforward. I think this is something you should do for every single character that you're going to play. Now, let's talk about the laning phase, because that's where you start getting leads, you snowball, and you become the carrier of the game. It's very important that you have a good laning phase, or otherwise you're always going to be behind and you're always going to have a tough time. You want the game to be as easy as possible for you. So, the first thing I want to talk about, and I specifically chose a clip where I'm playing against a Bebop. One thing to note, there's a right peek advantage in this game, it's in most shooters. So, whenever you're standing around an objective behind it, you want to peek on the right side, not the left side, if you can avoid it. Because it's going to give you a massive advantage and it's going to make it a lot harder for them to see you, and then you're going to be able to get your abilities out or shooting them where you have the advantage and they don't. Now the next thing I want to talk about is orbs. So the orbs comes out every single time you shoot a minion. Half the gold is going to be in the orb before 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes all the gold is going to be in the orb. So it's very, very important you shoot the orbs. Now one thing to note about these orbs is there's bullet travel time. There's also shooting advantage. So if I'm the one killing the trooper, then I have an advantage to get the orb. It's not a big advantage, but it does count a little bit. And then there's another advantage is the closer you're standing to the trooper that you're killing, or essentially to the orb, the easier it's going to be for you to last hit it. And then obviously you can also melee a trooper, the orb doesn't spawn and you just get the money immediately. So what you want to look at is try to stay as close to the orbs as possible. So good places to stay in the laning phase is right here. It's going to be right over here. It's going to be right over here, depending on what you're doing. Here's decent. Bebop is kind of scary because he can hook you through this. He can like hook you right here. But over here is also good. And then whenever you're pushing in, you kind of want to stand here as close as possible so you can take the orbs. It's very, very important you don't stand far away, because you see a lot of players who's standing in the back, shooting at the orbs and missing all the time. You'd be able to do a lot more by standing more aggressive. And this game, honestly, a lot of the advantages you get in this game comes down to you having bigger balls than the opponent and being a little bit closer and more aggressive. Let's talk about movement, because that's one of the most important skills in the game. So obviously you can dash jump. If you have kinetic dash, you don't use 2 stamina bars to do that either. Normally you'd be using 2, but with kinetic dash you only use 1, which is extremely beneficial, especially if you're buying this item. For example, let's say you're playing Abrams or you're playing some other shotgun characters where you really want that item. It's very, very beneficial to be able to only use 1 stamina and get the same thing done. And then also, whenever you're doing the dash jump thing, you have to do the right timing. So you can see here, I did it right, you know. Then you can also see if you do it wrong, it says failed dash jump timing. So it's very important you actually learn the timing of doing it. You basically dash and then jump a little bit later. Now there's some other things that are really important. For example, you're pushing the enemy tower up here, the staircase. You can shoot and you can just roll down the stairs back and just doing this, bang and forth. Now another thing a lot of 7 players are going to be doing is, this is mostly last patch, but people are doing this, is whenever you're sliding, you don't use bullets. So people are using fleet footwork and then we're sliding the whole time, just shooting all the time without really using bullets. Very beneficial to understand that you can slide and you don't have to use bullets. So let's say you're in a fight, it doesn't really matter what character you're playing, the enemy is low, but you only have 5 bullets left, you know you're very low on the mag. Start using your stamina bar, slide, and shoot at them. It's going to give you a huge advantage, might even get a kill, only because you learned that trick. Now, another thing that's important is you can jump on walls. So you can jump up to the wall, and then you can bounce off it. What you do is you go towards the wall, you jump into it, and then you go away from it after hitting it. So basically what I'm doing is I'm clicking A and W, going into it, and then D to get away, right? It's very, very beneficial if you want to go further up in the air, because then you can have another jump ready. I can show you guys a clip in game where this is going to be very useful. Alright, so here we are in game at a pretty standard spot. So a lot of people, you can't really get up here, right? Like, it's impossible to get up there normally. And when you're cheating in, you're pushing through the enemy base, having the advantage of high ground is actually very important. So what you can do is you can do what we just taught you, and then you get an extra jump by jumping into the wall, jumping away, and then jumping up. This is going to give you a massive advantage because a lot of the time being up here is going to give you a huge advantage over the fight. It gives you a better overview. And also if you're a squishy character that don't really want to be in the middle of everyone, being afraid of getting flanked by standing in here from all the sides, having the advantage of being up there very quickly and very early on, instead of having to take the staircase, it's just a big advantage. And then obviously there's other places in the map where you can escape only because you know this trick and maybe the opponent doesn't, or they don't have the stamina left to do so. Let's talk about the jungle camps, because these are important to understand. It's very, very good that you know what it does. So there's different jungle camps. There's 3 different tiers. There's level 1. These ones that give about 150 souls, give or take, depending on the game state. It increases every single minute, I think half minute. These are very good to take, especially early game. They're easy. You can kill them very quickly by doing a charged punch, which is holding down the key and slapping really hard. These are very good for the laning phase. It gives you a small lead whenever you don't really have anything to do. So let's say you push the lane out and you can't gank for any of your teammates. You don't have anything to do. Go and clap these quickly and get a little bit of extra gold. The second one are tier 2 camps. Tier 2 camps are a little bit bigger, they're stronger, and they're harder to kill. So you can't really kill these early game unless you have a character that's pretty good at it. It takes a long time, you take quite a bit of damage, but once you can kill them, they're a decent source. However, it's very important you can kill these quickly because the amount of souls you get is not that big. Lanes are still much better. So if you can take a lane, you want to take a lane over taking the camp. Now then, the last camp, and also the most important one, the tier 3 camp. These camps, you want to take them as early as possible and whenever you can. They give a tremendous amount of souls. I believe it's about 700 souls plus, and that increases depending on the game state, so sometimes it's going to go up to 900. If you can take these, it's very important you do take them. However, a big problem is if you do take this camp and you die, the opponent can steal all the souls from you. Because whenever you die after taking jungle camp, you're going to drop a ball, and that ball is vested souls that comes from the jungle camp, which is going to decrease over time. So make sure you take this if you can, but also it's very important you do not die right after taking these camps, because you're just going to be feeding the opponents in that case. And then also we have some mixed camps where it's a little bit of small ones, and there's some tier 2s. Not too important. I mean, these ones are very easy to kill for something like Infernus, because you just run through it all with Flame Dash, and then you shoot, and it's very simple. So if you have a good character again for taking these camps, it's very beneficial. And if your character kind of sucks, you don't have to focus too much on them. So the jungle camps spawn at minute 7. However, you also have these walls, and they spawn at minute 10. These are super important to get because they give a lot of souls. They're very beneficial, low risk. You're going to take a little bit of damage by taking them, and the way you take these are different. You have to punch them. The best way is to do 5 big punches. You can also take the 10 small ones, but nobody really does that. 5 big punches, hit it, take a little bit of damage, and get the souls. Up here there's 2, on the other side of the map there's 1 place where there's 1. Another important thing to note, at minute 10, and every 5 minutes after that, you have a buff that spawns on these bridges. The buffs are extremely important to take, and you can see both teams are kind of fighting over the buff because they both want it. They're both a little bit late, but the buffs are super important for you to actually snowball and carry games due to how powerful they are. So it's very important you actually try and get these buffs every 5 minutes because it's going to help you win the game. Now, it's extremely important to know what exactly does the buffs do and who on your team should be taking the buffs if you have the choice to pick and choose. So the first thing to know is there's 4 different buffs. There's a gun buff, survival buff, a casting buff, and a movement buff. The gun buff gives you 40% bigger ammo size, 20% fire rate. The survival buff gives you 400 health, and then it gives you 1% health regen. The casting buff gives you 20% cooldown reduction and 25% spirit power, which is obviously amazing on any caster heroes. And then last but not least, you have a movement buff, which gives you +2 stamina, +3 sprint speed, and it gives you zipline boost by 50%. So it's very important if you have a ganking character that he gets a movement speed buff, because he can get around the map so quickly and get a lot of stuff done, kill people, and get out. Alright, let's talk about one of the most important gaming objectives. You have the mid boss. This boss is one of the things that makes you win games. You kill a few people on the enemy team, then you go for the mid boss, you kill this thing. It's super easy to kill early games, so the earlier you kill it, the easier it is. And after killing this, you get a fire rate buff, your troopers become stronger, and I believe you also get a healing buff. Overall, this thing is one of the main objectives in the entire game. You want to get it, and also when you do get it, if you die, you respawn 50% quicker. So it's super important to have, because you fight, you can get quickly back to the fight afterwards. So let's say you kill 3 on the enemy team, 3 of your teammates die, you get back to life, you go fight again, right? You take this objective because you want to use it to take the enemy towers. That's how you win the game. You want to get the towers. The best way to do that is by getting the mid buff. Now, I want this guy to be new player friendly as well. So, one thing that's very important, and I see this a lot with new players, they don't know how the boss works. So when you're killing it, you do damage to it. Auto attacks tend to do a lot more damage than shooting. So I would recommend shoot, auto, shoot, auto, shoot, auto. It's very beneficial. Now, one thing that happens, when you kill it, this rejuvenator comes down, the crystal thing. And the only way to get the rejuvenator, whoever punches it gets the buff basically. The only way to kill it is with a heavy punch. So what you want to do is you want to stand very close to it. You want to have one person who's ready to parry, and you want to have one person who's ready to punch. That's generally the optimal way to do it. Sometimes people have more than 2 people in there, but generally you want to have at least 2 people ready, and you want to communicate who punches and who parries. And then you want to time it. You see 2 people parrying here, and 1 guy punching afterwards. And that's how they secured it, because the enemy tried to punch as well, but he couldn't get it due to the parries.